This is Risky Women Radio, a show to connect, celebrate and champion women in risk, regulation and compliance, sharing insight and perspective from the most influential members of our global Risky Women network on the latest developments we need to think about, the challenges we should all talk more about, and the innovation we are most excited about in governance, risk and compliance. Bringing together the hundreds of senior women professionals already connected with a new emerging group of leading women and men. I'm Kimberly Cole, your Chief Risky Woman. Welcome to Risky Women Radio. Today's session, we're taking you into one of our live events. So I hope you'll enjoy this podcast where we join our lunch at the ASEAN Regulatory Summit that we held last month at the Marina Bay Sands Hotel in Singapore. I hope you enjoy it, and please watch out for future events that we hold all over the globe as part of our regulatory summits. Thanks for joining, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. Welcome all of our risky women to our Singapore event today, and sorry our timings have all been a little bit crazy. But let me just give a quick intro. We've got many familiar faces here who have been to the Risky Women events before, but this is now a global network. We're operating across 11 different cities across the globe. We started in Asia, starting in Hong Kong, and Singapore being one of our, I think maybe the third place that we extended the network to. I'm not going to go through all the details, but you've got a copy of our annual report on your table here, and so that sort of summarises a whole range of different events, but we'd love you to take a look at that. And also we have updated our website, and we've added a few new features on here as well, so you can see all of the events that are coming up. So if you happen to be in New York, you can attend the New York event, for example. And then down the bottom, we have a whole range of different assets, and you'll see one of our newest additions is our Risky Women Radio. So today, we are actually going to be recording the session for a podcast on Risky Women Radio. We released the first of the podcasts last week when we were in Sydney, and we had two of our government affairs Risky Women from Citibank and from BNY Mellon were kicking off the Risky Women radio series. Today we're releasing another episode which was with Sam Mostyn, who joined us in Sydney for Risky Women. And as I said, we'll record today, and we've got a few others lined up. So anyone interested in speaking on a particularly topic around governance, risk and compliance who'd like to come and join us for a podcast, please let me know as well. So it's already been a pretty active kickoff to the Risky Women series so far. To date, we have hosted events in Sydney, Boston and Chicago. Obviously, we've got Singapore today, and we have got New York at the end of the month. So it's all very active. We're thrilled today that we are going to have another, what I think is going to be very interesting topic. And our title is Leading in Disruptive Times. So today we've got two award-winning lawyers. They both lead their compliance functions of their businesses, and they were both, so we've got both of the inaugural Singapore Chief Legal Officer winners. So it's a big day for us at Risky Women. So let me give a very brief intro, and then we're going to have both Loretta and Gladys join us and share a bit more about their careers, but I'll just do a brief intro. So Loretta Yuen is Executive Vice President, Group Legal and Regulatory Compliance at OCBC. She oversees the full spectrum of legal and regulatory risks, including anti-money laundering across OCBC Bank and its subsidiaries, and provides advice on regulatory risks and legal issues. Beyond the CLO award, Loretta was conferred with the Ibf Distinguished Fellow Award in 2016. The Ibf Distinguished Fellow is a significant role model who serves as a beacon of excellence for the financial industry. Gladys Chun, General Counsel at Lazada Group, is our second speaker today. And Gladys is responsible for legal and compliance matters where Lazada operates, which is quite diverse, includes Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam, Hong Kong, China, and Russia. She started her career in corporate and tax practice before moving in-house with roles in retail, franchising, and technology. She has led her team at Lazada to win multiple awards, and in addition to her Chief Legal Officer award, Gladys was named one of the top 10 30-somethings of 2017 by the Association of Corporate Counsel. So I think we have two incredibly accomplished women who will be able to tackle this question of leading in disruptive times from different perspectives and across different industries for us. So please, Loretta and Gladys, join us up here on stage.
How is everyone today? I see there is, a male change agent at every desk here.
Table.
We have our friends of risky women.
Well, I think one big round of applause. We need more of you guys. We love you. So thank you for being here with the risky woman.
I saw they have a wine event in Boston next. We should go. We should all go for that.
Yes, we do have wine events in Boston, New York, Chicago, and San Francisco.
Oh.
We did actually do a lovely event here at the National Gallery last time.
Nice.
So sometimes we do things in the evening, and then you can have wine, just not at lunch. Okay, so let's kick off. We have, as I said, got two incredibly celebrated chief legal officers here today. So I've given a couple of highlights, but maybe both of you could share a bit more about, what have been the highlights in your career and how you've sort of ended up where you have.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll start off, Gladys. So I've been with OCBC Group for the last 18 years. 18 years ago when I started there, I was just a little legal counsel, and I remember at that time our department was not more than 9 persons. Today, I'm leading the entire legal and compliance division, and our staff numbers 412 across all our offices. That's not just testament to the growth of OCBC Group, but really the regulatory storm that has befallen the banking and financial services sector in the last couple of years. So that's a lot of things going on we can talk about later, but you asked about my highlights. So I'm a mergers and acquisitions lawyer, a banking M&A lawyer. So when I joined OCBC, I think one of the highlights has been that I've completed quite a number of M&A deals with OCBC, all quite high profile, and I've learned so much from there. Just to name a couple that we've done, we just acquired National Australian Banking's wealth management business. That's in 2017. We did a $430 million acquisition of the private wealth business of Barclays as well. That's in 2015. We did a $6 billion acquisition of Wing Hang Bank in Hong Kong. I think that was the one that everybody knows about because it was widely reported. And of course, the $1.5 billion acquisition of Bank of Singapore. That was in 2010. So I love M&A work. So that's my blood. I've been doing that all my life. So I think that's my major highlight. Another highlight, it's actually currently what I'm experiencing right now, because the banking industry, and you will hear from Gladys, it's kind of starting on our technology journey at the moment. RegTech is quite a big thing for us, fintech adoption. So I'm quite excited, and one of the highlights I've been doing is that really spearheading a lot of the fintech projects within OCBC from the legal and regulatory compliance perspective, and talking to my board about it and getting them involved. So it's been quite interesting.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Well, of course, my career can't compare to the illustrious career that Loretta has. She looks 25, but she's worked 18 years. I don't know how she does it. But so I've been with Lazada for 4 years. I joined when we were closing the funding round, Series B, with Tesco. Before that, I was with Yum Brands, Inc., managing their KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell franchise across 14 countries. Was not good for the waistline, so I quit. And before that, I was an attorney specializing in corporate and tax in Baker McKenzie. When Loretta was going through her deals list, it's like 6 billion, 4 billion. And I'm so glad I have a few billions on my list to share to, otherwise I feel so left out. So I think in terms of achievement, given that Lazada legal team is a very young team, and we start our journey right at the start where the explosive growth of technology. Last year has been an award-winning year for us, in addition to what Kimberly have shared. In fact, the team was shortlisted and some awarded 10 categories of award across regionally and globally. And one thing that I was very proud is we beat my shareholder, Alibaba, to win the in-house team of the year in the Asia Legal Awards in Hong Kong. And I was seated right next to the Associate General Counsel of Alibaba, and I wasn't sure how I should react. But that, again, it's a huge testament to the team, a lot of hard work that we've came a long way to where we are. So in terms of achievements, Alibaba deal is the most celebrated deal for the Lazada life. I mean, we're only a 6-year-old company. I think in 2016, Alibaba first invested $1 billion in us. In 2017, they upped their stake by another $1 billion. And this year, March, we received another $2 billion in a very short span of time. And in 2016, when Alibaba acquired us, we subsequently also acquired RedMart. So for those of you who live in Singapore, you would use RedMart because it's highly addictive. It's too convenient. And they
can buy wine and cheese on RedMart.
Exactly. We sell everything, right? If you want grocery, you go to RedMart, and you want everything else, you go to Lazada. I think we also, for the first time, launched a loyalty program called Live Up. We partner with, I should say now, ex-Uber. So we partner with Uber and Netflix, where we offer loyalty programs to our customer. And for those of you who are familiar with Amazon, Amazon Prime was also a loyalty program that they offer to their customers. So we did that. We also have, a lot of people know Lazada as a platform company, but actually we have a large logistics fleet called Lazada E-Logistics. And on that front, we've been doing a lot of breakthrough stuff in 2017. Most of you would have heard EWTP, Economic World Trade Program, launched by founding partner Alibaba Jack Ma during the G20 in Hangzhou, where subsequent to that, we've launched a digital free trade zone, the first of a kind in Malaysia. So that was launched last year, so that kept us quite busy for the launch and having a new model, a fulfillment model for e-commerce globally. It is the vision for us to make it easy to do business everywhere, and it is Jack's vision to deliver goods worldwide within 72 hours. So that's
incredible. So, I mean, I think we got a good sort of insights into both your careers and the businesses, and I think it's going to be fascinating, and we will open it up to questions if you've got some questions later, to look at what that means from a compliance, from a regulatory landscape, and obviously across quite different industries. So just before we get into some of those areas that you need to think about compliance and growth, which I think is a kind of interesting topic, what have been some of the biggest risks that you feel that you've taken in your career?
We were just discussing that just now, and I was just telling Gladys the biggest risk I've taken so far is actually right here and right now, because it's true. Okay, I mean, what I mean is that, like I said earlier, the banking industry in Singapore is taking a huge drive into the fintech space, the innovation space. So I mostly struggle, but I worry about whether I'm making the right choice when I've chosen the fintech solution, whether to implement it. Do I take a conservative wait-and-see approach? But if I do that, then I risk being slow and sidelined, or worse, irrelevant, right? Or if I take a real, the Sing Parents call it the Chonga approach, right, and go for every solution I see, then it's very risky too, because it's not only costly, but I'm also draining all my resources down one path. So for me, the biggest risk I'm taking right now is how do I balance, a bit of the daring do, as you say, a bit more of a bravery thing, a bit of a courage thing in going into the unknown, yet balancing that with good judgment. I think that's the risk I'm facing at the moment.
I think the key is really taking calculated risks. For most of us who are lawyers, unfortunately, law school taught us to be super risk adverse. And we tend to be a bunch that tend to be very risk resistant. So you can imagine working in an e-commerce company. When I first joined, we were very, very small. It's probably about a couple of hundred of us, and then we scaled in the last 4 years massively. Just for example, when I first joined, I was the only lawyer in Singapore. I had a paralegal in Bangkok, and I had another lawyer in Vietnam. Today, I have a team of 41 people across Southeast Asia, covering both legal and compliance matters. So that's how fast we scale. And that's not even how fast the business has grown. So just to give you a sense of, the lawyer per employee ratio, right? At current state, one lawyer services about 226 employees of Lazada. And that's pretty much, the setup also in Alibaba, which is a lot of burden on a lawyer to address the risks of 230-something employees at any one point in time. So I guess for us, for me, the biggest risk, it's continuously growing, it's the same area of risk, is really navigating the regulatory landscape. For me, e-commerce, logistics, and payments, if you look at 5 years ago, there was no regulation, right? The rules are intended for brick and mortar retail, brick and mortar transport company, and brick and mortar payment company like the banks. If you talk about e-wallet, or if you talk about NFC type of payment, enabled payment, it's so foreign in this region 5 years ago. So for me, the biggest risk, and it's still the biggest risk for me today, is really navigating that landscape and the complexity around various issues like consumer protection, data localization, privacy, and availability of online information, because all these could act as an impediment to trade, right? I mean, we live in a borderless world, but I still can't order anything that I want from Italy to get shipped into Singapore. Right. There are still many barriers that we need to overcome together, and that's a constant battle. And I guess, with a young company, I have been quite fortunate to be at the driving seat and experience that change alongside with the business folk. So for us, we choose to disrupt rather than be disrupted, right? That's our mantra. Which is quite different from, where Loretta, and the evolution that she's seen in the last 18 years.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And I mean, Loretta, I read in an article that you had said compliance has moved sharply from an afterthought to the very forefront of critical business considerations. We now actively participate in business discussions concerning business strategy, product development, and business decision-making with senior management. So I guess from both of you, I mean, expanding on what you were just saying, Gladys, what does that mean for skills now, for your team and for you? And how do you see that evolution continuing?
Okay, so new skill sets, or what kind of skill sets we look for to kind of take on what's coming on, right? So I think a thirst for knowledge, I think the quest for learning and knowledge needs to be there with the people. And, as you can hear all the change that Lazada is going through in the e-payment space, and I think the banks are going through that. So as a banking lawyer, as a banking compliance person, you need to maintain that thirst for knowledge and quest for learning, especially as we move down this new technology space. That's one. The second one is really the knack for problem solving. So I think problem solving is really exactly to the quote that I just made, because when the board or when senior management comes to you with a problem, what they're looking for is a problem solver. So you need to come through with a practical solution, because they don't want to hear the rule book. They don't want to hear, the MAS says this, or the law says this. They want to hear the solution and how do they get the business outcome, but yet still remain safe within the confines of the regulation. So that's where we come in. So those are the two things I think it's important from a banking perspective.
Loretta is very kind. I have a long list. So I think, echoing Loretta's, one should be open to learn about new domain of knowledge. With the evolution of technology, we must remain open-minded. That's given. I think for me, what I'm looking for, the skill sets, is really a sense of entrepreneurship. Being in a tech company, we were a startup. I would like to still think that we're still a startup, even though we're part of Alibaba Group. That sense of entrepreneurship is very important, which means that you have to be a strategic thinker. You have to be able to navigate risk strategically and tactfully. And in Lazada, because we operate in 6 different markets and 6 fragmented markets, the ability to work across multicultural and across multilingual team is important. And you need to be, culturally sensitive, to the norms in Thailand or Vietnam or Philippines. I think lastly, it's really an outstanding communication skills, because at the end of the day, what we're doing on a day-to-day basis is influencing, advocating, and ability to distill complex issues of laws. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, what are the big focus areas this year for the business for both of you as well? Loretta, do you want to start?
Maybe some quick thoughts on that. For me, the topmost of my mind is financial crime compliance, AML and sanctions compliance, because I think that's where a lot of banks get hit quite strongly by regulators. Second piece is what I've been talking about, RegTech, FinTech adoption, data analytics. That's quite big for us as well. And then I think lastly, but also more importantly, talent preservation. So I think I need to make sure that the knowledge and the things that we learn remains in my team. And also importantly, we were just discussing that with Gladys, how do I find the right people to come in the next generation, right? I'm looking for data scientists, I'm looking for people who can understand the technology use in the compliance world. So I think it's a very small pool of people, so it's quite hard to find. I think that's a challenge as well.
Well, I guess for Lazada, from a business perspective, it's about unlocking an era of inclusive trade. We believe that with the right global policies in place, it's an opportunity where we can unleash an era of inclusive trade where regardless of the size of the companies, everyone should have equal benefit from the global trading system. And the more inclusive it is, the more people will be empowered to really drive the transition to a fairer and more robust economy globally. I think from a functional perspective, legal and compliance team perspective, for me it's very clear. It's about innovation. It's about innovating to scale. It's about innovating to make sure that your business partner and you speaks the same language in taking calculated risks and always remain ahead of the curve. Yeah.
So what is your view then on the sort of compliance landscape? There's been a lot of regulation, a lot of, the pace of change is huge. So what does that mean now, and what do you think you're going to see in the future?
Okay, in Singapore, the MES has set up 2 new departments, a data analytics department and a data privacy and data enforcement and AML enforcement division. So I think they're going down that path of putting a lot of focus on that. So I think the landscape will continue to be in that space, AML compliance enforcement, as well as doing that, we have to actually make use of data analytics, because that's the strong message that's coming up from MAS. So I think banks in Singapore, I think we all kind of cooperating with one another, sharing information as to how best we can tackle the technology question on data analytics.
I think at least from non-banking perspective, may not just be e-commerce space. I think this year, Keppel's case in Singapore has, made their headlines all over the world. It is the first time we're seeing a huge corruption case against a Singapore company, and that has really changed the landscape from, we always hear the FCPA, we always hear the DOJ extending their arms and legs to, as far as Brazil and Mexico. But now, last year was really a wake-up call for a lot of people, given how close, that case is to home. What I'm actually seeing that you will see a lot more collaboration, and the collaboration will exist between governments because a lot of the transactions that's going to happen, it's going to be in the digital world. And in the digital world is borderless world, right? I mean, how do you expect an Indonesian government to go, hang on, the data transmit at whatever speed and I can geo-block and that belongs to me, right? It ain't gonna happen that way. So I'm going to see a lot more, and I have seen a lot of collaboration between governments and between governments and businesses. So G to G, G to B will be a big thing in order for everyone to make a compliance work in whatever field they are, not necessarily e-commerce or banks.
Yeah, I mean, I think collaboration, and we've been hearing a few themes this morning in the conference. And Loretta, you mentioned financial crime being one of your priorities. That's certainly been a topic as well this morning. I guess what are some of the 2 or 3 trends that you're seeing that you think will have a significant impact on the way that your organisation meets its financial crime obligations?
Well, I think indications are showing that the heightened scrutiny by the regulators on AML and sanctions compliance is not going to recede. I think we've seen billions and billions of dollars of fines being levied on banks for poor internal control environments, for not being able to catch the irregular transactions, or rather, kind of facilitating money laundering. So I think the trend is it will continue in 2018 and 2019. And I think banks, we must up our game. We must get ahead of the money launderers, and we must use data analytics and technology to up our game, for sure. That's one trend. A second trend is that the regulators are kind of evolving in the AML space. They are now saying that they expect banks to play a bigger role. They want us to evolve together with the crimes. They want us to be ahead of that. So I think that's a bit. I mean, we are still grappling with that. They are saying that they're telling me, Loretta, you need to preempt. You need to think about what the money launderer's next step is. So I think that's my next. I mean, that's the next thing that's coming, and we're kind of still. I mean, the industry is struggling with that. We are still thinking of ways to get around that. So that's a current topic. So I think that trend is going to continue in 2018.
Yeah, it's interesting in terms of one of the speakers this morning, Jeff Carmichael, said that the use of technology is probably one of our biggest hopes for closing the expectations gap. But then he was talking about the sort of challenges around, it will help be more efficient and effective. However, the regulators are going to still want to know who trained the system. Yes. So you're still going to rely on...
Correct. So you're talking about the black box, right? Yeah. So MES has come out and publicly to say that they will not allow banks to take on or to adopt fintech solutions where you cannot unpack the black box. You don't know what the algorithms say. So for us in OCBC, I think we have gone out in the media to say that we have adopted 2 fintech solutions, particularly in the transaction surveillance space. And I'm actually quite happy to say that the vendors that we worked with, they're quite open about sharing their black box secrets. I think it's probably something that's quite like we'll share with you, because they're like their trade secrets, right? But for the 2 fintech companies I work with, they are sharing. And the best part is that they are actually presenting it in front of MAS, and we are unpacking and unlocking the algorithms. And I'm actually trying to understand all that squiggly things, what it means, and exactly what is that function is supposed to do, and what is the outcome supposed to be. So I think it's moving.
As a tech company, I find that technology is just a tool, right? It's what algorithm that you put on onto that technology that's going to serve your purpose. So, for me, it's very clear that, we talk about using technology, we talk about leveraging technology, but technology can only get you that far. Is really, putting the algorithm, understanding what data, understanding how data behaves, and understanding how different data sets interact with each other. That's where the value add is, and that's where the power of that tool that you've developed can achieve.
So therein lies the big challenge, right, on talent preservation and talent how to find the talent where all that Gladys has said, with a compliance mindset and a compliance and risk overlay on that. So the pool is actually very small.
Yeah, and look, it's interesting because you obviously are in a tech company, so to speak. So what, do you think you have any insights that sort of from your vantage of being in a tech company that should be applied across other industries, especially maybe into the financial markets?
Of course. I like to think that tech people are cool, so you should all be like us. And generally, when I do public speaking, I try to wear my sneakers and jeans and Swatch watch, just to be representative of the tech community. But today, since I thought that I'll be amongst all gorgeous women, I should dress up. So I think what I felt that's very different when I go out network with people who are from non-tech is the mindset change. For tech companies, it's very natural for us to continuously challenge status quo. Right. We will come up with beta version today. Tomorrow, someone will say, why can't I have version 1.0 with this improvement? Right. We're constantly disrupting ourselves. We don't even need other people to tell us that we sucked. Right. We just look at our own self and go, okay, this tool, can't deliver this, so we need a version 2.0. So that's one key features or attributes that I find that exist in tech company. When I look at my friends in Google, Facebook, Airbnb, we're all identical, the way that we work, right? But then when you talk to people who are from the traditional industry, oil and gas, manufacturing, old school manufacturing, I felt that I was on a different planet with them. I'm sorry if someone's from the same industry that I've just said, but I'm just expressing my personal view.
Oh, you didn't say banking, though.
Banking is still okay, because I have Alipay, I can't say that. I think another key attribute is being agile. For tech companies, you should be quite familiar with the concept called sprint. So everything is done in a sprint mode. So being agile is a key feature of being in a tech company, and that sort of environment, whether you're legal or compliance or people or finance, you need to work in that sprint environment. And one thing is also ability to adapt and embrace change very quickly. That's something that I find there is a huge difference between tech versus non-tech companies. Our appetite for change is much higher. Our ability to adapt is much higher compared to traditional industries. And also, given that we're in a disruptive mode, all these becomes very natural to us. It's not like we had a checklist and go, you must be this, you must be that, right? So it's a natural progression of who we are.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think, good lessons there, disrupting yourself and being agile, I think everyone can learn from. The cost of compliance, and this is much more from a financial perspective, but the figures I had that it was estimated to be around $8 billion annually and growing, but this morning I saw someone quoting that it was US $99 billion. So whatever, it's a very large number in terms of the cost of compliance. And then the financial penalties were estimated to be at $345 billion at the end of 2017. And I also saw this morning, we said that by 2020 we'll have 300 million pages of regulations, which is an awful lot for you ladies to read.
You can fit it to a robot.
So,
a RegTech robot.
Yes, exactly. So given all of that, and the advent of RegTech, which you've both mentioned, what are the technologies that you're seeing have the most promising capabilities to, I guess, help around the cost of compliance and how we can manage that sort of incredible flow of regulatory change?
So you see the problem with banks these days, and I think we don't do this very well because our systems are old school, the cascade model, and it's very rules-based, right? So when we talk about transaction, let's just keep to the transaction surveillance space. The systems that we use there is very rules-based. So we say, we just input a parameter that says that, just spit out all the alerts that, all the transactions that's above $10 million. Then we check whether it's irregular or not. So it's not a very good way of doing it, and which is why, I think in other parts and other literature says that, we're not catching the real bad guys. Mm-hmm. So I think the technology has moved. We have moved to artificial intelligence, to machine learning, to natural language processing, where it is not rules-based anymore. So the technology that we are employing, it's what we call unsupervised learning, and the algorithm now is not hampered by parameters. It just goes into the big data environment, which is the bank's the transactions portal, and it goes and looks for anomalies. So rather than get it fixed to a parameter, it just looks for anomalies. When you see whether it's and you plot the alerts on a scale, and you see where the outliers are, and that is one that probably would drive the accuracy of finding the bad guys. So that's what we're employing in OCBC. But in terms of cost of compliance, I want you to just be very clear, and we talked about it just now, right? That I don't see a reduction in compliance headcount just because we are employing all these techniques. Mm. Because what I'm essentially doing is removing all this mundane, manual, repetitive work away from my AML analysts, so that they can do, and they free up resources, and they can do the stuff they've been hired to do, which is high value, sophisticated, reviews of whether a transaction is irregular, applying, AML theories and all the rules to see whether we can catch the bad guy. So I think it's not so much reduction of cost of compliance from central compliance perspective, but maybe at the front line, because at the front line of the banks, there's a lot of work, a lot of compliance work that is mundane and repetitive. So that one, we can use a machine, we can use technology to kind of like reduce, and that's where the reduction would be.
Yeah, which is interesting because that was going to be my next question. So if you could think about what one thing would you most like to invest more in or change more quickly in this space, what would that be?
I think for me, it's really harmonizing, standards, rules across the world, ideally. So take an example. For those of you who are familiar with trademark regime, every trademark office has a different process of filing trademark. But fundamentally, it's the same IP right you're protecting. And one of my pet peeves is power of attorney. I get extremely upset when I need to execute a whole bunch of different power of attorneys just to file a bloody trademark, right? It gets very irritating. And for me, there is so much more efficiency that we can all achieve together as part of the ecosystem if we start talking to each other, harmonize the standards, and agree on some protocols and principles as to what we should do when it comes to a systemic issue. Right, so I would love to see more investment and development along those lines. I mean, it could be harmonizing of, cross-border data exchange policy. It could be harmonization of, customs rules across all the different, let's start with ASEAN, okay? Like, harmonization of customs rules across the ASEAN so that we can facilitate a truly global free trade environment, right? Harmonization of payment rules. Remittance rules, the cost of complying with all these different set of differing standards and policies doesn't justify, the benefit that I'm deriving at this point because, I operate in 6 different markets. I have 6 different set of policies, which, I need to comply with 6 different central banks requirements. And the banks themselves also have different compliance rules when it comes to, global standards versus regional standards versus local standards. So in my ideal world, I would like to see a lot more investment being done by bringing people together and start, looking at policies in a very global framework.
We saw this morning some statistics on the costs of all of that variation, so very good point.
I just want to build on Gladys' point because we are aligned on that. Because in the banking industry, we want to harmonize that. And in fact, we have a big project ongoing that's already been announced in the media that we're actually setting up a national KYC utility. So for all banks to do a harmonized KYC process across Singapore. And that's amazing. So we're pouring a lot of investment in that. So that's one piece. And then 2 more pieces just to, for the wish list. Can you imagine if SWIFT screening is also standardized? I mean, those of you who are bankers here, instead of each bank screening for the payments itself, why doesn't SWIFT do it at their end? SWIFT just does it and just bill us that service, right? That's one piece. And the third piece is transaction surveillance. That can be centralized as well. Harmonized policies on how we do transaction surveillance and do it across the whole of Singapore or across globally. And then we can, catch the bad guys together and we can reduce all the cost and inefficiencies. I think that'd be great.
So I think we have to wrap up. So just a couple of quick questions to finish on, which is our Risky Women rapid fire round. What's your one word that you would use to sum up the world of governance, risk and compliance from your perspective? Start with you, Loretta.
Stressful.
Well, I'm going to disrupt the rule. I have 2 words, not one. So I think for me, it's embrace change. That has been constant in whether the way we do business and the way we regard risk and compliance. So 2 words.
Great. Your top risk for 2018, Gladys?
For me, it will be privacy, security, cybersecurity. For the first time, I was reading the draft security bill, and for the first time, I realized that there is a thing called darknet. So I was going to chime into Loretta's point when she said that you have to know what the fraudsters are thinking. It's all on darknet. Trade issues, it's also probably one of the key things, given that, we're looking at unlocking inclusive trade. So that's probably, those few key ones.
And Loretta, for you, top risk?
Top risk would be financial crime compliance, AML and sanctions compliance, because I think that's still the top risk for most banks. And this morning we were talking about conduct risk, and I think that's a fundamental issue that I think all organizations, all firms need to put in place to make sure that the whole organization speaks in one voice and does the right thing for not just the organization but the larger community.
I think we could have had a lot longer to get into privacy, to get into more on financial crime. So what do you think is the cure for the cost of compliance?
For me, two things, education and innovation.
Great.
For me, would be fintech adoption and data analytics. I've spoken about that.
Fantastic. And to end, optimistic, pessimistic, or uncertain, what's your outlook for the year ahead?
For e-commerce, optimistic all the way.
I would have to say optimistic as well, because I see a lot of solutions that's brewing and blossoming in the industry, and I think there's a lot of work and a lot of things we can learn from that. So optimistic.
Fantastic. So I'm sorry I haven't managed to give you a chance to ask questions. You'll have to grab these fabulous ladies at the end before you head back in. But thank you very much, Gladys. Thank you very much, Loretta. We could have spoken for a lot longer, but thank you for joining us today and being our risky women.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this exciting episode of Risky Women Radio to connect, champion, and celebrate women in risk regulation and compliance. I'm Kimberly Cole, based in Hong Kong. For more information on the Risky Women Global Network, head to our website in the episode notes, and please be a part of the ongoing conversation by subscribing to this podcast, connecting with us on Twitter, or even reaching out to me directly by email.